Mr. Speaker, we are living in a globally connected and fast-changing world which comes with its risks and opportunities. Both of them are great challenges. If we can keep in step, or better still, move a step ahead, the opportunities for this country are enormous. If we fall behind, as we have done over the last decade, the risks are enormous. As the Prime Minister said today in his statement to Parliament, he said, we have a lot of things going for us as a country. We are rich in natural resources. We are one of the best food producers in the world. We have a beautiful landscape. And we are home to some of the smartest and hardest working people in the world. However, we have not been making the most of our strengths because in recent times, New Zealand incomes have fallen further and further behind the countries we like to compare ourselves with, including Australia. He went on to say the government is committed to turning things around and in particular to closing the gap with Australia. We are not achieving our best potential. There is a gap between New Zealand and Australia which needs to be closed. In fact, NZEI acknowledges that the gap between those who succeed and those who are failing in our education system is wide compared to most other high-performing countries. We are not ahead. We are not abreast. We have fallen behind in significant sectors of our society. We have a culture of underachieving in New Zealand that this government wants to turn around. And as a government, we will bring reforms through in 2010 which will unlock for us greater opportunities as a country and for families and for individuals. Change is usually uncomfortable but often necessary. I remember one agent of social change said, to change the future you have to disturb the present. We must bring change in what we do and how we do things. We inherited an economy that had gone into recession in early 2008. Government spending had increased by 50% in the previous 5 years. Spending had increased at double the rate of economic growth and government revenue. Short-term happiness like a drug. The tradable sector, that is exporters or industries competing with imports, has actually been in recession for 5 years, contracting by about 10% over that time. There have been almost no net jobs created in the tradable side of the economy for the past 10 years. By contrast, the non-tradable sector, domestic industries not competing with exports, including the government, has grown by 15% in the past 5 years. So the part of the economy that provides national income has declined, while the part that requires that income has grown. It's simple mathematics. It sounds to me that some rot has set in there. It sounds like fiscal decay has been eating into the health of our economy. This is one of the reasons why we now face cash deficits of between 10 billion and 12 billion for each of the next number of 4 years, needing to borrow approximately $240 million a week. Mr. Speaker, this government this year is going to get this economy healthy and strong again. We will do this through a number of strategies highlighted by the Prime Minister today, which will be detailed in due course, especially around the budget on the 20th of May this year. Mr. Speaker, this year the government will continue to open up New Zealand exporters' access to world markets. The government will put considerable energy into obtaining these trade agreements because New Zealand's future economic prosperity depends on them. New Zealand exports already support a significant proportion of jobs here in our country. And by increasing our access to world markets, we have the potential to create more jobs, more high quality and well-paid jobs that New Zealanders seek. Mr. Speaker, we live in a dynamic world of constant change and constant competition. We must adapt or we die. I remember an author, Isaac Asimov, a famous US author, who said this, and you will recall his quote, "The only constant is change. Continuing change, inevitable change. That is the dominant factor in society today. No sensible decision can be made any longer without taking into account not only the world as it is, but the world as it will be. While Mr. Gough bleated on this afternoon, while he is a wealthy farmer, about the average New Zealander, the Prime Minister of this country talks about making that New Zealander above average. I know what side of the House I want to stand on. Today the Prime Minister has presented to us a work plan for 2010. It is tangible, it is practical and plausible because it takes into account the state of the nation as it is. It identifies the areas which are holding us back. But his plan is also aspirational because it sets a high goal. It is inspirational because it takes into account the world as it will be and as our nation ought to be. I, like the Prime Minister, never want to eat the crumbs off Australia's plate. I have too many Aussie mates over there who would just love us Kiwis to be satisfied with that. Goodness me, pretty soon we'd be happy with them beating us at the Rugby World Cup with that sort of attitude. No, we are at least equal to them. We don't want the crumbs. We'll have their Moreton Bay bugs off their barbies and take back our pavlova as well. And then we will beat them at the Rugby World Cup to boot. We have to start thinking that we are the lucky country and we have got water as well. Mr. Speaker, the world is changing and this country needs to make a step change to keep up. Because of the speed of change that happens in our world, our children are now being educated to live and work in a world that does not yet exist. Every parent knows their kids are brighter than them, or so my son tells me. Our kids, every single one of them, need to be prepared for the future that is incessantly approaching them from over the horizon. So this year we will make legislative and funding changes to modernise our secondary schools. Because we live in a globally connected and competitive world, we need to ensure that no one slips between the cracks in our education system. This is why national standards are critical to the unlocking of opportunity and success for our young people. Literacy and numeracy are the foundation disciplines and skills that lead us into every other discipline of learning. You cannot study medicine, you cannot study engineering or horticulture, finance or law without strong literacy and numeracy skills. You cannot train to be a builder, a plumber or an electrician, a civil engineer without strong literacy and numeracy skills. Without those skills, you can have low paid unemployment or employment. The fact that 1 in 5 of our students are failing, and if you look at Marion Pacifica, then that figure is even more frightening, is of great concern to us. In 2007, nearly 1 in 5 school leavers left without NCEA Level 1. More than a third, 34% of school leavers left without NCEA Level 2. According to the Ministry of Education, they said educational and job prospects will be limited for those who leave school without Level 2 NCEA. Mr. Speaker, we will focus on increasing the number of children in our poor communities and in our Pacific and Maori populations who attend early childhood education. We will improve the training of our teachers, both in our training institutions and professional development programs. We will focus the tens of millions currently aimed at struggling students. We will support national standards with further reforms to ensure that children who need extra support get it. Mr. Speaker, Labor ought to support our changes. They said in 1999, every child in New Zealand should have access to schooling which enables them to reach their full potential in life. But that's not what we've got now. Even the NZEI acknowledged that the gap between those who succeed and those who fail in our education system is wider than it ought in comparison with nations that we look to in comparison with us. Mr. Speaker, 2009 was a remarkable year of progress for the government in fulfilling the promises we gave the people of New Zealand. The one promise we are focusing on in 2010 through a myriad of paths and strategies is simply this: to give New Zealanders a brighter future. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.